Here are your hosts, Kyle Fellows and Andrew Mertig. This is the Draft Fellows Podcast.
Welcome back to episode 15 of the Draft Fellows Podcast. I'm Andrew Mertig. That is Kyle. Nope, that way. That's Kyle Fellows. And together we are the Draft Fellows. Make sure you check us out on YouTube or on your favorite podcasting platform. Today we're covering the NFC West draft review. If you want to check out the first 14 episodes of the series, you can follow the channel and you can find all of those episodes there as well. Kyle, how are you doing?
I'm doing really well. I am enjoying the summer. It is flying by. We were just talking off air, like how quickly the summer is just blowing by. We're actually not that far from training camp, and really, preseason is right around the corner, if we're being honest. And I mean, it's nuts that football is almost back. We're enjoying some TV specials, like Receiver is out right now, and we've talked about, of course, like the off-season Hard Knocks show and those kinds of things. So it's a good time to be a football fan because we are almost back to having some good football in our lives.
Yeah, it used to be like the doldrums of May, June, July, and I feel like May has a little bit more content than it used to.
Yeah.
And now July is starting to get a lot of content. So really, it's like if you can make it through June,
you can do it.
Yeah, we're gonna be right
almost
back to the NFL season. So yeah, we're really wrapping up our series that we started this whole show with, and we're gonna be covering the NFC West today, and then also in our next episode, and then we will be moving on to some other content that we have planned for sort of the preseason, and then kicking things off into the NFL season. So the first team we are going to talk about today is the Arizona Cardinals. They, of course, in the first round took wide receiver Marvin Harrison Jr. at number 4 overall. With their second first-round pick, they got edge Darius Robinson from Missouri. In the second, they get cornerback Max Melton from Rutgers. In the third round, running back Trey Benson from Florida State, guard Isaiah Adams from Illinois, and tight end Tip Ryman, also from Illinois. Oh, yeah, and cornerback Elijah Jones from Boston College. That's a lot of third-round picks. Fourth round, Dadrian Taylor Demerson, the safety from Texas Tech, Xavier Thomas, an edge from Clemson in the fifth. And you can figure out the rest of their picks if you are not watching on YouTube on your own.
We're not giving those away. You gotta go to YouTube and watch the show there. I guess that's what Andrew's saying. But yeah, this is a fun. Honestly, Andrew, I don't know if this is a hot take because I haven't heard a lot of people say this, but when we were putting this show doc together, I feel like the Arizona Cardinals might be one of my favorite drafts this entire draft cycle. And I wasn't really aware that I felt that way or that I would feel that way going through this exercise. But Marvin Harrison, obviously, when you start your draft class with Marvin Harrison, like that makes the whole thing a lot easier. So let's start at the top there. And this is a player that I think it's almost been boring to continue talking about Marvin Harrison because he's gotten so much publicity because of who he is, how talented he is. It's almost like we've talked Marvin Harrison Jr. to death. And yet when you turn on the film, you realize like, this is not boring. Like we can continue to talk about how special of an athlete Marvin Harrison Jr. is because, I mean, it's incredible. Like elite ball tracking, body control and flexibility that you just wouldn't expect from someone who is 6'4", right? Like he moves like he's 6 foot tall. Just an incredible athlete, and slouch after the catch. He does a lot of his winning before the catch, like in his route running and those kinds of things, but just an all-around well-rounded receiver, and you don't see those guys come out a lot. I really, really like Malik Neighbors in this class, and so I kind of wanted, you always kind of want to be the contrarian that's a little bit different. I wanted to like Malik Neighbors, but every time I just went back to the film, like there's no doubt that like Marvin Harrison, in my mind, was an elite prospect in this draft class and for the NFL, and was wide receiver 1 in this class. And that's why the Arizona Cardinals had no hesitation about snatching him up at number 4.
Yeah, fun for them because their biggest need by far was wide receiver. And so when Harrison fell to them at 4, I'm sure it was a pretty easy pick. Pre-draft, we were talking a little bit like, would the Cardinals be tempted to trade down with one of the quarterback-hungry teams? Didn't seem to really fall that way, and I think they made the right decision. At some point, you got to cash in the picks. Obviously, they had a lot of draft capital this year. And to get, we always want to be conscientious of not saying generational player all the time. But Marvin Harrison Jr. is the highest graded wide receiver that I have had in my time of tracking grades the way that I currently track them, ahead of even like a Jamar Chase. And so I love him. I think he's fantastic. I like that he's really, really polished, but he still has a lot of room that he can grow because there's more things you can ask of him. And I really liked that, speaking of Hard Knocks Giants, we got a little bit peek behind the curtain of what he's like talking to coaches, right? Because media, but seems like a really humble guy, does things the right way. I don't like, he's never going to be a problem. He's just going to go to work. And that is so fun when you have a guy that is this talented. And I really like the position that the Cardinals are going to be able to put him in with Kyler Murray, and, being able to step in and be that number one receiver from day one.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's worth noting just that, like, Marvin Harrison Jr. kind of got a little bit of a bad deal because of the way he handled the process. Like, he didn't do the drills, and obviously the media wants that content. The teams want that opportunity to meet with him and to, get those numbers and all that testing information and stuff. So you kind of get this, like, does he think he's too good for it? Like, what's the deal? But by all accounts, like, anybody who's ever coached the kid, anyone who's actually like met with him, Andrew referenced just like the Giants interview with him, it's very obvious this is a player who's about his business, and he's very, his character is outstanding, football character, personal character. Like, this is someone you want in your building. So I think that there was some shade thrown at him because, like, we didn't get the numbers we wanted because we're numbers junkies. But the reality is, like, this is a guy who's going to do everything the right way when he gets in your building.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I mean, you can kind of understand because these players really, like, they're coming off of a college football season, and then they are being asked to basically get in shape to do some drills, like get out of football shape, get in shape to do athletic testing, and then change their bodies again to go back to football shape. And Marvin Harrison said, I don't need to do this. You know how fast I am on tape.
Yeah.
Like, figure it out. So, I think in some ways that could kind of come off the wrong way, but I think I like the way he approached it, and he knew his value. So good for him.
Yep. And
how
all
about
his teammates, I was going to say, all of his teammates in Arizona are raving about him. Like, there's no question that this is a player that's going to be an impact player, and no one's upset that he did the things the way that he did them. But yeah, you were going to get us to Darius Robinson here. What were this is a question, of, is this an edge? Is this a defensive tackle? Like, interesting player in Darius Robinson out of Missouri.
Yeah, Darius Robinson was graded. I graded him as an edge. He fell all the way to number 81. He had a really, really good film grade for me. He would have been edge 5. And like, these tweener players are really difficult to sort of dump in a bucket. So I just decided I'm going to evaluate him as an edge. That'll give him a little bit of a benefit anyways. But Robinson's problem in my formula is that he is an older prospect and his RAS was not good. So those both knocked him pretty significantly down the board. All things considered, I think if you can look past the athletic testing, or if you think there's some justification there, then you can rationalize this pick as a guy who did look really good on tape.
Yeah, I'm the same as you. I think I ended up with him as my edge 5. If he was younger, then you're more bullish on like what the upside is here. But he's a player who's powerful player, like impacts the game in a big way. But as a 24-year-old rookie, like, he's going to be someone who's kind of, there's not as much untapped potential there as there is with other players, but certainly a player who's going to play with a ton of power. He's going to be someone that you can deploy all along the defensive line in creative ways. So I'm sure the Cardinals are looking forward to doing that, like putting him in as a 3-tech, but also being able to line him up way outside as an edge rusher as well. So he's going to, obviously impact the run game at his size, but then also bring enough juice to rush the passers. So he'll be interesting to see what his career arc is and how he actually is used by an NFL defense. But a lot of talent there in Darius Robinson. They had another second-round pick here in Max Melton that I feel like is worth talking about, Andrew. Like, this is someone who had a ton of buzz, like, throughout the process. What were your thoughts on Max Melton, and what 43 is, I think, kind of where we thought he would end up late in the process. Early in the process, I think there were a lot of people who thought that Melton might make it to the third round, but this kind of feels right for him.
Yeah, for me, like Melton can play a little bit inside, a little bit outside. I like him blitzing off the edge, super competitive and physical. He'll get involved in the run game. I liked that he has some experience in both man and zone, but I thought his technique was a little sloppy at times. Had trouble kind of switching between gears, and doesn't necessarily possess super long speed. So I had him as a third round pick, and I probably would have been a little bit more comfortable there, but based on the preseason or the pre-draft buzz, I think that I can understand why he is going in the second round.
Yeah. So those are your, headliner picks, right? Like at the top of this class. You mentioned it when we kind of went through this. They have 3 third-round picks here. Do any of these guys jump off the page to you as like, someone that you're expecting to make a big impact like early in their career?
Yeah, Trey Benson was my RB1 in this class. Really like him. I think, James Conner's probably going to be the bell cow as long as he can be, but he's never played a full season. So I think Benson probably gets mixed into the rotation, maybe takes over if Conner misses some time. And I think long-term, this is a running back who could be really, really good, especially given the opportunities that having a quarterback that's as electric as Kyler can be going forward.
Yeah, the interesting thing with Trey Benson was that timed verified speed. I didn't know if I saw like elite speed, but he tested at a 4.39 off the top of my head, I believe, because I'm a freak and I remember weird stuff like that. Like that's stuff that I should have forgotten already. But 4.39, I think, was his verified time. And so he does have that breakaway speed. And when you're looking at like, there are a lot of running backs who can do a lot of things. For me, that if he does have that top gear, which he showed in the testing, and then there are times on film where he creates things that aren't there. And I think that that's one thing that makes a running back special is like, if you can get what's blocked for you, that's great. And that's like 75% of being a running back. But that extra, like if you can create what's not there, I do think that he showed a good bit of that. And he has 0 fumbles on his stat sheet. So there's a lot of reason to think that this is a player that they could trust early and often there in Arizona. So fun addition there. I think a value in the third round for Trey Benson, absolutely. But I mean, they had a million picks, Andrew. Anybody else here that you may want to make sure that we give a shout out to?
Tip Ryman's really fun blocking tight end. I think he can be really impactful there. Dadrian Taylor-Demerson, I think good value, a guy who is going to be a really good special teams player, potentially work his way into a starting safety role. Although the Cardinals have 2 really fantastic starting safeties, so he can be a depth player and maybe playing some nickel and dime there. Xavier Thomas is like a really light, super like bendy edge. And maybe he can be a situational edge rusher there too. So I really like their class overall.
Yeah, Max Melton was my cornerback 9, so they got him there. And I mean, like he has that inside versatility to be like your slot guy. Elijah Jones was my cornerback 10. So they took, I mean, the little bit of variance there and where they took those guys, but they took a guy who probably plays outside primarily on the perimeter and a guy who probably plays inside. So potential to really impact their secondary with what they did. And obviously you mentioned Dadrian Taylor-Demerson, the safety, another impact player in their secondary. If he was just a hair bigger, Andrew, like I think he was my safety 4. He probably would have been near the top for me, but just that slight frame at 5'10", 195 or whatever he was, just a tick under 200 pounds, had some reservations there. But a player who plays certainly bigger than his size and could end up being a very good free safety in the league. So I really like what they did with this class. I like what they, the consistency that they found within it to take shots on guys who are good now, but if they hit, could absolutely be great players. And so I like what the Cardinals did a lot.
Absolutely. So that allows us to switch over to the LA Rams, who also had a pretty large draft class, just maybe not Cardinals large. In the first round, they take Jared Verse, the edge out of Florida State. In the second round, they get another Florida State defender in Braden Fisk. They get Blake Corum, the running back from Michigan, in the third round, and add safety Cameron Kitchens from Miami in the third as well. Brennan Jackson, the edge from Washington State, in the fifth. Sixth round, Tyler Davis, a kicker, wide receiver Jordan Whittington from Texas, and Bo Limmer, the interior offensive lineman from Arkansas. And the seventh rounder, you're only going to find out if you watch YouTube.
That's what we're going to do. We're going to bury our best content, the 7th round pick reveals on YouTube. Yeah. So Jared Verse highlights, the top of this draft class. Florida State edge rusher, very, very explosive player. I've mentioned on other episodes, I spent a ton of time in the edge group for this draft class, and Verse was my edge too. But I think if I had to make the pick at the top of the draft, if it was my team, I would have a really hard time passing on him as the edge one, just because of the well-rounded player that he is. He impacts the game as a run defender, very sturdy in that regard, but also has a lot of juice coming off the edge as well. Exceptional speed, bends really well for a guy his size. For me, one thing that I really loved about Verse that I just felt like set him apart was there were a lot of times on tape where late game situations or maybe 3rd and long situations, he seemed to turn it up a notch when the lights were the brightest and when he knew it was a passing situation where he didn't have to worry about am I responsible for the run here? His get off in those situations, he was quickly to the quarterback, and I just felt like he played with a little bit more edge, and I want that out of my edge rusher to impact games in those big moments. So I was pretty excited about that, about Jared Verse. One more thing about him, 31 reps on the bench press at the combine, strong dude. I think he was the strongest, and the second place guy at edge wasn't close. So you get the speed, you get the bend, but you also get the strength there. I think that combination makes him pretty special as a prospect.
Yeah, I think Verse probably would have got drafted in a pretty similar spot if he came out in 2023. So for the Rams, you get the same player plus another year of experience, really adding to that pass rush repertoire. I had him as my 15th overall player. Really, really liked him a lot. And Fisk, I didn't like as much. I think it's interesting to see what the Rams are doing. Obviously, you have to replace Aaron Donald's production, and you're not going to do that with one player, no matter how hard you try. So they're adding levels here, right? We're going to have more solid interior pass rush, and then we're also going to add on the edge, and we're going to try to make up for what Aaron Donald provided, but cumulatively as a additional. And we could talk about Brennan Jackson here. We could talk about Tyler Davis. I think the Rams did a really good job in creating depth and some good young players that can provide more in the pass rush game than what they've had outside of Aaron Donald in the recent past.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the athletic profile of someone like Fisk is phenomenal. It's just he's kind of got T-Rex arms, long body, short arms. So how does that work in the NFL? Is he able to, free himself up with those short arms? And then he's 25, at the end of the 24. If they make the playoffs, he's gonna have a birthday in the playoffs, 25 years old. So that's an old rookie, but he's a fantastic player, a lot of athleticism, but because of some of those factors, he was a little bit further down my board as well. But Blake Corum, I mean, I'm a Michigan guy, so this is a player I'm familiar with. What did you think of the Michigan back? Obviously, a lot of talented backs in this class. Corum, we thought was going to end up with Harbaugh in LA. He does end up in LA. He's just with the other team.
I had Blake Corum as my 138th overall player. I was not particularly high on him. He's a little bit older. He did test pretty solid. I thought he was more of a get what is blocked for him behind a really fantastic offensive line than a guy who is going to create stuff for himself. But those kind of players are successful in the NFL all the time.
Yep.
I guess what I'm wondering is Blake Corum this year's Zach Charbonnet, where we're like, oh, is he going to eat into all of, we thought this with Kenneth Walker in Seattle last year.
Yeah.
Is he going to eat into all of Kyren Williams' action? And then maybe he's just stuck behind him until Kyren misses some time. I don't know what the Rams' plan is, but it sounds like, he's off to a really fantastic start.
Yeah. I think he's kind of that player who's going to get what's blocked for you there. I will say, I do think his vision is exceptional, and I think that he has really good leg churn, which is kind of a weird thing. But when the pile stops, his legs keep going, and it feels like he always falls forward for an extra yard and a half or two at the end of the run. So love those things about Blake Corum, but
At some point pre-draft, when we were having conversations, I sort of dropped the Aaron Jones name with Blake Corum.
Wow. Yeah.
And I mean, like Aaron Jones was a boring guy to me.
Yeah.
Like it was, and yes, he has exceptional short area quickness. Talking about Aaron Jones. I think Blake Corum does too. But it's like sometimes you just need a guy who has great vision and understands what's being blocked for him and has that like sixth sense of anticipating where the next angle is going to show up. And those guys can be highly, highly productive. You don't always have to have the turbo monster.
Right.
Speaking of Jalen Wright, but like those running backs are not often highly successful in the league. It's the guys like Blake Corum who have excellent vision, and that you cannot measure that like want to get the extra yard when you need to.
Yeah, and by all accounts, like high character guy. He's going to be a team guy. You just wish he was a little bit younger, right? Like this is a one contract player, probably in the NFL, but could be an impact player for the Rams for those 4 years for sure. But Andrew, the rest of this draft class, interesting players. I don't know if you haven't. I mean, they have a second, third round pick here in Cam Kitchens that we thought was maybe going to be kind of the cream of the crop of the safety position, and ends up going at 99 here. I don't know. How did you actually feel about Kitchens? Did you feel like his film was better than his draft process? Because the RAS was horrific, but like, is this a better player than his testing, or did you kind of feel like we kind of got him right here at 99?
Yeah, I would have had him just based on film grade as safety 4 or 5, sort of tied for safety 4, just based on film. And this was a weak safety class, so
yeah.
I didn't love him from the get-go. His testing kind of killed any hope that he was going to get drafted as high as we thought maybe he would. So that is interesting. The Rams clearly do not care about athletic testing thresholds and are willing to just, and that's what makes the Fisk pick even weirder.
Right.
Because like his athleticism didn't match his tape at all, just kind of like Kitchens, but polar opposite.
Right.
So yeah, Kitchens, I think on tape looks like a really good player. I think, for the Rams defense, they're hoping to just put him in really good positions and not have him as a single high and let him, develop the way that they have developed a lot of really good young secondary players.
Yep. I think if there's anybody else here, I mean, we could talk about all these guys all day, but we got a lot of third round picks here. I'll give a shout out to Bo Limmer, the center from Arkansas. Liked him. And it was interesting. His coaches had to get him back to Arkansas this year. They had to prevent him from coming out the year before. They just thought like, hey, you could use a little bit more time to develop. Obviously, he goes in the 6th round. So, it's good for him to go appropriately, and maybe he wouldn't have been drafted the year before, but comes out and leads the way among offensive linemen with 39 reps on the bench. So this is a guy who's strong, durable, 36 starts. So maybe he doesn't walk into a spot where he starts for the Rams, but this is a guy who absolutely could be a rotational player along the offensive line with a lot of grit and a lot of strength for them for a lot of years. So I like that Limmer pick as late as 217. That's a pretty good value to me.
Yeah, I had Tyler Davis as my 89th player and Bo Limmer as my 91st. They might have been my 2 best value picks in all of the 6th round. So good on the Rams for getting those 2.
Absolutely. So that is the Rams. That is the Arizona Cardinals. Thanks for joining us for the show today. Make sure you like and subscribe to the show, and we will. Well, I was going to say we're going to continue to cover each division, but we've got one more show of that in the AFC here that we will get to. NFC. We're in the NFC. That we'll finish up with the next show. But from the draft room to the gridiron, the Draft Fellows have you covered. Until next time, stay tuned and stay in the game.